Okay. Yeah. Great. We are live. Hi, everybody. My name is Mananpuri, and I'm the co-founder of Strategy for GMAT. It's a B school admissions consulting firm. We cater to MBA admissions for working professionals across the entire country. And for our foreign school admission brand, it's now called Dream Compass. We've just started that, so there is a link in the description. You can go ahead and check it out. Today's session is focused on the IIMs one-year programs, and I have like three very special guests with me. We've interacted a lot in the past during their MBA journeys, and it feels great for me, from my end to just welcome them here as panelists now. And in today's session, we will be focusing on the entire admissions journey from them, how their life was at their respective IIMs, career transitions, how should they apply, how should you apply for the admission programs, how should you choose which one to go to, and any other thing under the sun that you want them to answer. I'm sure they'll be glad to clear your doubts and answer all the questions. So without further ado, let's get the introductions going. So let's start with you, Shalja.
Hi everyone, I'm Shailaja. Thank you, Manan, for the nice words. Um, I have done my undergraduation from National Institute of Fashion Technology, specializing in general management for apparel brands. I worked with some of the brands in India, Middle East, and North Africa, managing their P&L and also strategic initiatives. My move to MBA was to move to D2C businesses and handle more strategic roles beyond fashion and apparel. Currently, I am with BCG into strategy consulting.
That's quite a transition, and we'll cover all of that. All right, over to you, Paras.
Yeah, thank you, Manan, and good evening, everyone. So, my name is Paras, and I would introduce myself as a salesperson by choice, by skills, by DNA. That's what I do. Prior to MBA, I worked for about 6.5 years in very young new age startups, primarily in again sales, business development, and marketing roles. My motivation to go for an MBA was to move closer to the C-suite and also understand the strategic aspects and financial aspects of how the top line of a business gets affected, and not just sales. So that's how I landed up at Cal, and I'm currently in a strategic growth role at MongoDB.
Thanks, Paras. Over to you, Sachin.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Manan, for this platform that you've given us. My name is Sachin Verma. Before joining my MBA journey, I have close to 9.5 years of experience. I was mostly working with IT firms, IT product firms, dealing with US healthcare, providing them a lot of uh, kind of products for maintaining their hospitals and stuff like that. Uh, Healthcare was always my choice of domain that I always wanted to be. So post my MBA as well, I've landed in a healthcare consulting firm called Indegene, which is based in Bangalore. But now I don't do product delivery. I'm more into the business management side that I wanted to be. So I am a product manager with Indegene. Thank you.
Okay, great. All three very interesting transitions post the program, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more. So let's first talk about your respective experiences at the school itself, right? And I'm assuming few things will be similar, few things will be different. So let's just start with you, Paras, on how Cal was for you, the Joka tribe.
Yeah, so I think most of the attendees would might have also heard that Cal is considered as one of the most student-friendly IIMs. So prior to joining, it just used to look like a phrase, but after joining Cal, I could actually experience why they call Cal as a student-friendly institute. So my experience has been very close to what I had wanted prior to my MBA. I think at Cal I was able to customize my MBA journey the way I had planned. When I joined the institute, kind of exposed every single activity, be it's club, competitions, academics, parties, sports, gym, any particular thing. And the institute gives you a kind of flexibility that you can decide how much time you wish to allocate to which particular activity as per your personal goals and ambitions. So I never felt like being force fitted to spend maximum of my time into academics and scoring marks. But I had a certain level of flexibility and to move those levers around. So in totality, that is one. And Secondly, I believe there was a very good intersection across programs. So there are multiple events in the institute which will help you interact and make connections with students across different programs, be it PhD students, PGP students, VLM students, and other full-time programs.
Okay, that's great. And what about you, Sachin?
So for me, I'm Ahmedabad. As most people know, for IIM Ahmedabad, the A stands for academics, but also the IIM stands for academic. So it's a very academic focused program. But then again, because it is a PGPX program or a program for executives, there are people with multiple levels of experience. So we had people from 4 years of experience to 15, 16 years of experience. And a lot of activities of the program are driven by the students themselves. So whether be it the placements or be it anything else, so everything is driven by students. So the students decide a lot of things of how they want to shape up their careers, how they want to shape up their roles. So in that sense, even though IIM Ahmedabad stands for academics, you get a uh, lot of scope for holistic development because the batch itself chooses a lot of levers where it defocuses yourself. You're not in the rat race again to just be uh, very sensitive about what kind of grades you are kind of trying to make for the placement and stuff like that. But then you get chances. You have all the kind of electives that you want for your personal development. So if I talk about myself, I chose certain electives which I thought would never be available to me anywhere else. So there was so negotiations labs or something like ILPM, which is kind of a philosophical, and there's also a course on Bhagavad Gita. So you can take your choices, go in there, do game theory experiments if you want to. So that kind of the program is very flexible in that sense. Yes, the first two terms are very traditional. They teach you everything about the traditional MBA. So it kind of builds the base for you. And after that, you're free to kind of make choices of your own where you want to go later in your life and what the kind of learnings that you want to take from the program. The program chair or most of the students that you meet would always say that IIM Ahmedabad is a buffet and you need to choose what you want to from that buffet. It's your choice, totally. So that would be my take on the program as well.
Okay, that's interesting. Going from I am a all academics to the other side, which is very helpful for people to know. Otherwise, in the webinars and everywhere else, that is the focus that's there from the dean and other people as well. That's good to know. Okay, over to you, Chalja. How was peak Bengaluru for you?
Yeah. Hearing from Paras and Sachin, I could say Bangalore experience is very close to what ANC is. It's very academically rigorous. Almost every 5 weeks, you would have an examination, midterm, end term. So the term lasts for 10 weeks. So yeah, every month you would have exams and then followed by weekly quizzes, etc., etc. The cases are rigorous in themselves. That's ACADS. In terms of networking with other programs, that's fairly easy because there are electives which covers all the programs. So you are connected with folks as well as PGPEM, who are very senior folks with rich experience. So it's fairly flexible that way of which electives you choose, number one, and also the experience you gain out of the diverse cohort. The other important aspect is NSR cell, which really distinguishes IMB experience, I felt. It is one of the leading incubation centers for a lot of startups, especially for women entrepreneurs. So, for any project, CAD related things that we do, we could really leverage the knowledge and the network that we had from the university itself. We could connect with a lot of founders and co-founders who are otherwise very difficult to reach to. Many of those startups were featured in the Shark Tank. So that was a very unique experience in itself. And I think most important factor is the campus thing. IMB's campus stay for EPGP program is away from the campus, which is planned planned that the people are moved to the college campus, which is under construction this year onwards. But I'm not sure when that will happen. But that kind of
I think there is network lag at Shailaja's end. Uh, we can move on and then we'll come back to her with her experience. Okay, so in terms of the admissions process, again, I'm sure all of you at least did apply to at least a couple of IIMs and maybe ISB as well. So, how did you approach the entire process, and any tips and tricks that you would like to share from your own experiences? So let's start with you, Paras.
Yeah, so I think I would like to break that into two parts. The first part would be writing your SOPs, and this latter part is once you get a shortlist, then preparing for the D-Day, which is the interview part. So for the first part, I believe if I talk about or I recall my SOP, I think it would have went through an iteration at least 15 to 20 times. And every time there was a feedback, at times I used to get intimidated, of course, thanks to you, Manan. So there was a time when I actually got a bit irritated and stressed also that the entire seeing all those red marks and all. But I can say that the kind of introspection I had gone through in those 1.5, 2 months, it still gives me the results even today when somebody asks me about my backtrack history, etc. And the entire process also groomed me how to think or how to articulate your thoughts in the best possible way. So if I compare my first draft to the one which I submitted, which got me calls from all the three IIMs, there was a drastic difference. So this is what my advice would be to the applicant, that please welcome whatever feedback is coming to you and try to avoid any stress. The idea is just to introspect more and articulate well.
Okay, thanks. And what about interviews?
You're asking me again?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think the interview preparation has to be broken into multiple parts. So specifically, if I talk about my experience at IIM and C, so I could feel that both the institutes, in a way, tried to mimic UPSC kind of interviews. This is what I realized in my first attempt, and my preparation was very different back then. I had not taken those consulting services back then, so I did not know that this is the kind of experience I will land up at, and that is why I believe I could not convert those calls in my first attempt. So in my second attempt, I had broken my preparation into multiple parts. First was, let's say, the general awareness. I subscribed to some YouTube channels who used to teach and give away very good material for IAS aspirants. That helped me understand the facts and also gather some opinions. The panel, they are more concerned, or let's say they get more excited or more interested to know your opinions rather than the knowledge of your facts. That is one. Secondly, the second part of the interview would be your profile. So that is where I believe that a serious applicant should be able to preempt all possible questions about your profile, about your goals, and should have very structured, logical answers. The less extempore part is over there, the better chances would be that you'll perform well in an interview. So my advice would be at least the part which is in your control about your hobbies, your career transitions. Why did you switch a job? What are your career goals and why are those goals, etc. Try to preempt, make a list of all these possible questions, prepare your answers, and probably get your answers vetted by somebody who has been to that. And the second part, of course, you cannot preempt everything, but try to be on the top of world affairs, macroeconomics, etc., especially for IM interviews.
Okay, that's a good point around current affairs, and a lot of times what people do is start preparing for that when the call comes in, and that to me at least feels it's a bit late. So along with your preparation around the essays and SOP etc., start that process right away or start yesterday. You should have started yesterday around it, because it's not just cramming up whatever is there, can be asked anything under the
True,
sun, right? Right.
true.
Great. Thanks, Paras, for this. Sharja, you had basically the
Yep.
grand slam of admission, admits. So, what about your experience?
Uh, I would agree with Paras on some aspects. There are some aspects though which are different for B and A and C that I felt. There's no extempore for B. So there's a written part of it. So I think since there's no general awareness discussion as such, that can be leveraged to, kind of get a few more minutes to talk about yourself, your plans, etc., during the interview. Now, coming to the written part, there's nothing that you can do if you don't know anything about the topic. So, of course, the current affairs, follow some YouTube channels where you get crisp data points that you can put across nicely, and of course, practice written aptitude. Have a good aptitude for writing in good conclusive way. And interviews, like I said, since there's no extempore part, you get a lot of time. Now, this is a make or break for a person who's very well prepared and knows what to highlight during the interview. This could potentially lead to a convert or not. So, it's very important that you have your career highlights, your plan, and pre MBA experience, all of that sorted, and kind of preempt a lot of questions and have a prepared answer for that, and not scrambling for answers during the interview.
Okay, sounds good. Uh, One more thing I would add is the written part for Bangalore. It also is to test whether you've written your SOP by yourself or not, right? And again, I reiterate that in all my sessions is do not get them written from somebody else, whether it's an admissions consultant, whether it's your peer, whether it's a senior, etc., etc. Do not get them written. Of course, you need another perspective. Make sure you get that, but the initial few drafts have to come from you. You have to get into the rigor of writing, and not just through the admissions process. I'm sure you would have written tons of reports and presentations while at the program. So if you're not in the habit already, it will be very difficult once you get in. So that's really, really important. So thanks, Shalja, on that. Sachin, Ahmedabad's process is like almost totally different from the other two, IIMs,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
essays are also just like 4 days, right? So what are your tips on preparing those, and of course, how to approach the extempore in the interview?
Correct. Correct. So first of all, I'll break my answer into two parts. The first one being something common, which I've found across the admission process for the top four institutes, including ISB. That is when you write the SOPs and you write your own story. So all these schools, what they're looking for is not because they, I mean, especially the IIMs, they have this 2 years program, right? There they are only looking for academic excellence and then kind of bit of a confidence in people who can articulate when things like that. But here, especially for the 1 year programs, what they're looking for is excellence throughout your career. And that excellence throughout your career or growth throughout your career should come out in the applications that you write for these schools, and should come out in your essays, in your SOPs, in your stories as well. They're looking for personal stories that show why do you want to. I mean, it's very important for these MBA, for these programs to understand why at this stage of your career are you trying to get into an MBA. You've been in India. The craze is for the 2 year MBAs. Why not you have done that when you were at that stage? Why are you looking for an MBA now? How is this program going to help you achieve where you want yourself to be 5 or 10 years down the line? So these are a few questions that, even though they are not explicitly asking you, but they would like you to portray this in your essays, or in all the answers that you give them in the interviews as well. So this is my take on a general process, especially for Ahmedabad. They don't have this explicit SOPs that they give you to write. Also, the application process is quite straightforward. You only sort of go through your roles and responsibilities, show your career growth. Then you get your shortlist based on two things: your GMAT score and your application process. But the application is not having any SOPs. You have not told them why do you want to do an MBA, or you have not told them what are your post MBA goals and things like that. They test that through, again, 3 days of stress kind of play phase where they give you these 3 or 4 essays to write. They would be asking you same questions implicitly, but then through a different format. Say, for example, how would you contribute to the class, or why should we take you when there are so many applicants, or what is kind of, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line, things like that. Or maybe in this COVID times, What have you done specially? I mean, which makes you stand out from others who are applying for the program. So you get 3 days, maybe 3 or 4 days. If you're lucky enough, 4 days, three essays of 1,000 words, one, and 500 words and 500 words, the other two. What helps you here is if you have already, if you start writing your stories, then I don't think you will be able to put your point where you should start forming the stories is way uh, before when you start. So, say for example, started thinking for going for the MBAs. You write your GMAT, and that is maybe 4 months in advance of the applications. It's then that you start spending at least 30 minutes of your time doing what Paras said, introspecting about your life, about what you have done, about where you come from, about what you have done in your career, how these things would help you in networking, in doing things post your MBA. Those things are reflected in the three essays that Ahmedabad asks you to write. How they are scored, when are they, I mean, how are they taking their scores into consideration? Nobody knows. That's a complete black box. So after that comes the interview part, and the interview again is kind of UPSC, kind of very stressful for at least for Ahmedabad and Calcutta. I can obviously say that this taken not by the alums. There's no alum involved, only professors, and the professors, they are self-proclaimed sadist professors. They love seeing you in pain. They like to see how you react when they put you in a very difficult situation. So it starts with kind of an extempore, and the extempore is, you're given a choice at that point of time, and you get to pick a chit. The chit says something. It's a yes or a no question, and the first thing that will come to your mind is yes, or it would say no. But then they give you some time to prepare for that question. Say for example, they would say, uh, do you think COVID is good? Was in hindsight a good thing? You would obviously say no. I mean, in your mind would say no. But then the whole process of answering these questions maybe is to judge both the sides of the argument and then come out with your side. But once you have come out with one side, you have to stick to that and defend that. They would, and to be very frank, you start speaking, they'll start uh, judging you, or they'll start interrupting you with and throwing you, bombarding you with questions. That is how it is. But then you have to defend your position. That is very important there, because they want to see, if they throw you to the other side, or if they throw you to under the bus, how do you react? You keep defending your position. Of course, you have to be humble, you have to be polite in the interview, and then that would take around 10 or 15 minutes of your, maybe even the whole interview is around the extempore itself. But then obviously not all the interviews go that way. Most of the time, the next or 10 to 15 minutes goes to your personal profile. They ask you questions about your profile. It is here they are looking for authenticity. Be yourself, be genuine. uh, Try not to say anything which is not in your applications, or maybe go against what is written in your application. So be genuine there, and then if you do all that, I think there's a good chance of you making it to the program.
Great. Thanks, Sachin, for this elaborate overview. I think so. If I can summarize the kind of differences in the process, wherein from a application standpoint, it's B and C, which are kind of similar, with one SOP and maybe two in Calcutta, where there's an optional essay as well. Ahmedabad is totally different with respect to that. Again, the nature is to put you under stress, which is also sometimes a good thing. Maybe a question for the extempore. And from an interview standpoint, C and A are more focused on your awareness of the world around you. Let's not call it general knowledge, but are you do you have your eyes and ears open, whatever happening is happening around the world or in the country, etc., or do you have an opinion on it? So that's what matters. In case of Bangalore, it's more a personalized journey that they look for in terms of where you're coming from, what you want to do, etc. So those are the broad differences and similarities across the processes. Now, of course, the question comes in, which IIM is better, right? A, B, or C, etc. So again, like in MBA, the answer to that is it depends. So based on your perspectives or your views, the three of you, what kind of profiles would you recommend for your program and not recommend? Or let's just say what you will not recommend. Everything else is, of course, open for recommendation. So let's say, what would you not recommend? Let's start with you, Paras.
So a really difficult question indeed, Manan, because I have my batchmates right with 5 years experience and 17 years of experience also, and you name an industry, and I know somebody in the batch coming from that. Be it there's a cancer specialist in my batch, there's a person from Indian Navy, there's a guy who was working with ISRO and whatnot. So I have seen very different, very unique kind of profiles in the last batch which I was part of. In the current batch, there is also a person who was an actor, so something very unique. Broadly, still, just to answer to your question, I believe if I talk about from a placement point of view, it is relatively easier to get those people placed who come with a less experience bracket. So let's say 5 to 7 years or 7 to 10 years. So after 10 years, what happens is that the person himself become very, very particular about the kind of roles, etc. he or she may want, and the kind of experience that person carries. So at times finding that particular profile from the market, it becomes a challenge. And the person with a very, 15, 16 years of experience might have to recalibrate their goals. So there are certain exceptions which may happen there. Again, but still there are many people with this kind of an experience also in my batch, so I cannot generalize this. But just to answer to your question from a placement point of view, this is what I would like to share.
Okay, cool. Nice, modest answer. Uh, Also the truth, maybe. Great. Shelja, over to you.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that I keep hearing from students is Bangalore is the hub for startups, technology. I would like to join B because I want to move to a startup and technology. No, it doesn't work like that. If there are 50 people in the batch who are closer to tech and have startup experience, those people have the advantage. Okay. If you don't have any experience in tech or in startup and you believe that just being in Bangalore would help you that, it may not happen. Your chances are equal in any of the IIMs. Number one. Number two, coming to Bangalore, assuming that you would get more opportunities from Bangalore recruiters, that doesn't work that way, because I'm sure Paras and Sachin both can validate that the many recruiters which go to C and A as well. So these are the biggest two misconceptions that I keep hearing, because of which a lot of applicants do not even apply to other colleges. So this is a no go. Apart from that, I think fairly ABC are pretty similar in terms of the long term springboard that you get in your career. Long term. Now, short term, if you're looking at just placement numbers, immediate jump, etc., you may see it. The place com and the placement is very spontaneous because it's very student driven. Depends a lot on which student body is elected, how autonomous it is, how much is the CDS involvement, etc., etc. So, a last year or last to last year perspective can be fairly tweaked. So should not take a call based on the immediate last year's placement or last to last year's placement, and look at it at a more holistic way. And all three are the same. Only if you have an international university giving you an admit, then this becomes a different conversation altogether. But ABC are similar. Yeah.
Okay. Just to follow up on that, there's one more, maybe a misconception or not, where Bangalore, it's at least construed that they do not, fancy people with higher experience, let's say more than 10, 11 years. They have a 12-year, number on the website as well. But how true is that? Especially for people with like 10 plus years of experience. I think you had 9 before that. So, yeah.
No, it's not true, because we had a person with 16 years of experience in our batch, and there were quite a good number of people above 9 and above 10. Hovering in the range of 8 to 10, there would be good number of people. So I think it's all about your pre-MBA, post-MBA plan, and how much of conviction and ambition and passion you show during your interview, and also how doable and reasonable it is. How much of a pivot is that you expect. Like I mentioned, people coming from completely non-tech industries and then hoping to become tech product managers, something that will get you shot down easily because it may be not that realistic. So yeah, I think the age or the number doesn't matter as much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sachin?
So I would agree to a lot of things what Paras and Shailja said right now. But I mean, talking about it is the largest number in terms of the kind of batch that we have. We have 140. We are kind of trying to expand that as well. Maybe in the next 2 years, you would see the numbers grow by one more section. So you would be seeing 210. Maybe next year. I'm not very sure, and I'll not be somebody who will be the authority on this. But then that's the kind of plan. So they are expanding the 1 year program. But then, because it is a large program or the largest in the IIMs, it sees obviously a lot of diversity. And I would not say that there is any role or any person who cannot apply for this program. If you have a decent GMAT score and you have a good, solid work experience with you, you are always welcome to apply for the program. The diversity, if I talk about, I mean, we in my batch we had a Miss India. 2012 Miss India was in our batch. We also had somebody from roadies coming in uh, to our batch. But then again, if I talk about the current batch, uh, the numbers are skewed because it's very heavily focused, and there are a lot of younger people, somewhere around 4.5. So Ahmedabad, I think by design is now, because it is expanding, it is also trying to get younger and younger people to the program. So it used to be 5 years minimum experience was the ask. Now it has gone to four. It was 4.5 in our case. Now it has gone to 4 years. So I mean, there's a certain inclination from the institute to get younger people in, but then also the average sort of looms around the same 7.5 to 8 years. So even though the batch is getting uh, a good number of young people, the average is same. It means it's also getting higher experienced people as well. We had people around 18 years of experience in our batch as well, and that was not just one or two. We had significant number of people who were more than 10 years of experience. So close to maybe 20 to 30%. So I don't
Okay.
think in terms
Okay.
of profiles there is a problem. And if you ask me personally, which IM is the best, I would say my personal choice was never against any of the IIMs. I was wanting one seat in any of the IIMs. I just wanted to get my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, or Calcutta. So my perception about all the three is very kind of safe.
Okay, great, great. So, Shailaja, you had admits from all, and there's a question around it as well. You had ISB as well, you had Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta. So, what made you choose Bangalore? Very quick retort on that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had two primary reasons. One is my family stays here. So for me, the most important aspect was if I get Bangalore, there's no reason I would leave my family and go away to another campus. I could manage both. I could give time to my family. I had a 1 year old at that time. Now he's 2.5. So it made my decision easier. Secondly, I had an admission scholarship from Bangalore. It is given to the top five profiles. So that is kind of, I felt that it was a coveted thing to get from an IIM, and I felt it was a special thing to have on my resume, and that's how I accepted it. And yeah, I think on this note, I would also like to mention we talked about ACADS and how ABC are different. B has a lot of opportunities to kind of be good at ACADS and all rounder thing, and you get gold medals. I'm not sure if ANC has that, and that adds a lot of value to your resume, at least maybe in a short run.
Yeah,
I cannot comment, but it yeah definitely looks good. In a mid-career level, you're doing an MBA, and despite that, you're kind of getting a gold medal and all of that. So
yeah.
these are some brownie points that Bangalore has, and yeah, I think I
Okay.
answered your question.
Yeah. Thanks, Shelja. Now, on the question around GMAT, again, my personal observation is that Ahmedabad is right now a little more focused than before on GMAT scores, and that's a reflection in the average GMATs and GREs as well that's coming in. Is that the case with others as well? Are they increasing, or maybe it's just a question, function of online GMAT and other things that are happening where people are scoring high? So, Paras, Shalja.
I think even if they are not increasing, but I definitely see them at least maintaining the at par GMAT score, which comes in or people bring in every year. So I don't see that going down in any way at all.
Okay,
Not real sure about the rest.
sure.
Just to
What are
add
your
to it, I
thoughts?
mean,
Yeah.
even though the focus may be on increasing the GMAT score of the batch, so it has increased from 700 to 710, I guess, and maybe
Okay.
increasing more. But then uh, the point is, even people with 760 or 770 who get initial interview calls do not make
Okay.
it to the program
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
maybe they don't have the other aspects of the application and the interview,
Right.
you know, done well. So you have to be overall very good with everything, not just with GMAT scores.
Okay. Cool. Sounds
So
good.
on this note, like in Bangalore, whenever we had any group discussions with our chair person, the discussion would never revolve around GMAT when we would talk about placements, things that could be improved over the years. Their point of contention was mostly about the quality of people that they get in a batch because it's a very small batch of 70 to 74 at max. So the focus is always on the quality. GMAT is an outcome. Now, of course, there's a benchmark GMAT they try to maintain, which is a 690 to 700, all of that. But again, it all boils down to quality of the batch and quality of individual profiles.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Few questions from the audience. Let's start taking them. And in case you're live on this session, feel free to ask any other question in the chat box, and we'll definitely try to cover those. So the question is around IIMs are not generally known for placements in consulting, and here you are, Sharja, who basically moved from a core retail role to one of the MBBs in BCG, for example. So is that a trend that you see changing? How many people generally from your batch were placed, and what's your take on that?
Well, I can't disclose the number of people, but what I can tell you is after I joined BCG, we also speculated a lot, but after I joined BCG, I got to know consulting space has seen a growth spurt and they are in need of talent, and their prime way of recruitment is campus recruitments. And here you have readily, experienced lot of people available through the 1 year program, and that's how MBBs have gone to all the campuses, not just B, and they've recruited good number of people from all the institutes. So this has been a new instance. Now how it is prolonged will depend a lot on the new place comms and CDS, but cannot comment on it whether
Okay,
it's a permanent or a temporary thing.
sure. And same trend you saw at least this year with your classes as well, Sachin and Paras?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We see all the companies, all the MBBs, they have visited, I guess, all the IIMs this year. I mean,
Right.
consulting in general never took lateral entries. This is a general trend, and that is
Yeah.
why the 1 year MBAs were never seeing consulting companies coming in. But with the sort of talent shortage that the consulting space is seeing right now, they have kind of experimented for the first time this year with taking the batch in, and it also now depends on the likes of Sailja and people from other IIMs. If they perform well and consulting sees some value, the MBB sees some value in recruiting from the 1 years, I don't think it would be a problem.
Okay, no pressure. No pressure.
More pressure, yeah.
Okay. Same with you, Paras?
Yeah, yeah. So I completely agree with Sachin and he's beautifully summed it up. So in totality, a lot depends on the market and the incoming cohort because 1 year placements are fairly personalized to a decent level, if not completely. So it depends on the aspirations of the people. If majority of them wants to get into consulting roles, then accordingly the efforts will be made to bring those roles in the campus.
Okay. Okay, that's
Yeah, I
great.
mean, I would again like to emphasize that this has been a new instance that has happened. So somebody who's, I keep getting a lot of questions that their target role is consulting, whether or not they should join IM. So that is a little speculative. Nobody right now can comment on whether MBBs will keep visiting for the next 2 or 3 years. So somebody who's very sure they want to be in consulting, be prepared to do the hustle on your own as well.
Okay,
That would be
fair,
my suggestion.
fair enough. But in general, the likes of Accenture, the Big Fours, etc., do visit. It was
Yeah.
just the MBBs that were kind of missing, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
it is also to do
Yes.
with it's also to do
Sorry,
with
go
a
on.
lot of placement policies that we have, right? So most of
Okay.
the MBAs, I mean, especially if I talk about PGPX, they have this NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, which is kind of, we don't display grades to the companies, and it stays for all the companies. Now the MBBs have traditionally selected, or maybe the first kind of recruitment happens on your grades. So when you say I'm not going to display my grades, the MBBs would certainly hesitate coming in. Also, if they take you at a level which is from a lateral entry point of view, they take you at a higher level, and there are people who have done the hustle for 2 3 years in consulting space, you'll be eaten up by them if you're just moving into that space. So it would prepare you for failure. So that is also one mindset in the consulting space. Why would they take you as a higher level? And I think there
Correct.
was a mismatch between the expectations that the batch had and the expectations where the consulting companies always had with the incoming batch. And I think
Correct.
this year that kind of wall has been broken, and we'll see how
Okay.
it goes
Okay,
further.
great. Thanks. That's really well articulated. Okay, Paras, from an admission standpoint now, for one in the program, how does it look at ACADS in general for graduation, 10th, 12th? If people have like sub 50%, does that impact their chances, or if you kind of make it up with GMAT, that would kind of help?
So I think I also personally felt into a similar category. I did not have very amazing academic scores. Obviously, a person or an applicant needs to meet the minimum eligibility criteria. My grad percentage, I think it was somewhere around 66, 67. So obviously the panel in all the three IM interviews, the panel kind of questioned that. But my advice would be, don't try to forcefully defend it. Try to be as candid as possible. If you try to force fit a logic, you're going to grill badly. This is something I attempted in my IMA's interview, and I mean, 4 or 5 minutes subsequent to that were spent only on my answer. So I did not repeat the same in my Cal interview. I candidly accepted that yes, my score is low, and the panel kind of moved on to other questions because this is something which is not in your control. So my advice would be to, like, don't be over critical about it. Just let it be and try to make it up with other components of your profile.
All right. Cool. Sounds good. And there's a question around 1 year versus 2 year MBA programs. And what I would suggest is, at least in India, if you are like 5+ years of experience, just try and go for 1 year MBA itself because you have a decent amount of industry experience. And at the same time, you would get back to the same industry or same location faster. However, when it comes to applying abroad, let's say you're shifting continents, etc., then a 2 year MBA might still make sense because there is an internship involved and you would want to know the local market, especially in case you're into sales or marketing roles. Then a 2 year MBA might still make sense. And then you don't compromise for that additional time because it's effectively a 20-year career post that. In India, unfortunately, apart from the IIMs and ISB, there are not many 2 year MBA programs which are geared towards people with significantly higher experience. And when I say that, it's about 3 4 year plus years of experience, right? Um, then a question on product management, Sachin. Now these days we are seeing a number of people as APMs etc right out of their graduation, right? And for people who want to transition from, let's say, a delivery role to or development role etc to PM with almost like 8 9 years of experience, is that getting difficult? Or if not, then how should one approach it when it comes to transitioning to a PM role?
So it's very true that I mean, people right after the graduation get into APMs, but then you also have to see what kind of people are getting there. Do they have certain pedigree? when they reach there. It's not that everybody and anybody can make into an APM just out of college, right? So maybe people from premium IITs and things like that, they do get that shot. For me personally, I was struggling to make that transition because I had like 9.5 years of experience, was on the delivery side, knocking on the doors of business, but then nobody was ready to give me the chance because I never had any experience of doing any management or any business activity or function, right? So in that sense, doing this MBA gave me that validation that okay, he has maybe sort of done the he's identified the gap in his profile and has kind of done the hard work to move from delivery to management. So for somebody who has no experience can directly move there, but somebody who has experience with him or her, you are what you are because of your experience. You're paid well because of your experience, right? So why would somebody take you for a business role when you have proven excellence in delivery role? Correct. But then if you are actually looking at that place where I was hitting that glass ceiling and nobody was giving me that chance, MBA was kind of important for me to make that pivot. And I don't think without that I would have even gotten an interview with any firm for a product management role. And I don't think it's difficult in the sense because today product management is in a lot of demand, like consulting. So there's two kind of profiles that everybody is looking at, either consulting or product management, right? So because the demand is from the student side, this Placecom is forced to bring in a lot of product management roles. And when
Right.
they come in with a lot of variety as well. They come in from APM to PM to senior PMs.
Got
So
it.
of course, I mean, at a per year level, you can always make that transition.
Okay. Great. And Shailaja, especially there are questions where people are on the other side of 30 and 8, 10, 12 years of experience. How do you then decide whether to go for a full-time MBA program like you did or a part-time? Which one, would you recommend, or what factors to consider, for choosing either?
Yeah. Um, so I think for me, the reason why I did my MBA was I had almost like hit the glass ceiling. I was doing well in my career, and I was I was taking up progressive roles. I wasn't in a stagnant role. But there is a certain level of pivot that I expected from my role. I was in a very niche role, and that kind of pivot is possible in a placement boosted environment. And unfortunately, executive MBA, although it is beneficial, it doesn't really give you that platform to kind of leverage the brand of the university, right? So I think the 1 year MBA really gives you an advantage in that case. Even though if you have a good experience, you are doing well in your career. If you want to do certain level of pivot in your career, the placement kind of opens up opportunities. Like in my case, I was in retail. On my own, probably I wouldn't have been able to crack an MBB core consulting role. Probably there are many other types of roles within consulting. I would have been able to crack that. But this is a pure generalist role, which would have been difficult otherwise, even with an exec MBA. So it depends to what extent of pivot that you look for in your career and at what stage of your career you are at. If you're somewhere at 9 to 10 where you are still, you can kind of pivot and move to move your industry or the role, etc., etc. I think it's very good and advisable to do a 1 year MBA because the ROI on that will be really higher in terms of your long term career growth.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Okay, there's again a bunch of questions around, which rounds to apply to, right? Is R3 too late? Or, in your respective schools, it was an equal division of seats that happened when it came to admissions. So, thoughts on that? Let's start with you, Paras.
Yeah, so Manan, here I would like to reiterate the advice I had, taken from you only. So I would suggest people to kind of distribute their applications into multiple rounds. Do not go blindly only after R1 or R2 or R3. If you're applying to 5 schools, try and distribute your application because your learnings from R1, if you wish to utilize them, you need some time. So if you're facing an interview in R1, let's say it didn't go that well, you will have certain amount of learnings and you need some time to absorb those and tweak your preparation. So that's where you should also have some interviews in R2 as well. So this is what I followed, and I think I was fairly satisfied with this strategy, which I did not follow in my first attempt, and it hit me back.
And also, I think a lot depends on the kind of schools. If it's international, it's always preferred to apply R1. And specifically with IIMs, I've heard that it's equal division, so it's not a distinct advantage if you apply earlier. You should apply when you're ready. With Ahmedabad, again, you can apply to 2-3 rounds, so across. So, Sachin, in those cases, how is the reapplication, taken into consideration when you're rejected like 3 weeks, 4 weeks prior? And if you then still apply, are there cases you saw or know of who made the cut?
So if you talk about cases, I am one of the cases. So I made the cut. Applied to round one. Did not even get a interview invite. Maybe because uh, round one. I mean, I don't know. It's a complete black box. I can only speculate what happened to round one application. But then when I went to round two, I had very crisp. I did not change a lot of stuff in my application. The content was the same, but I tried to make it more crispier, and put the point across so that it hits the nail as soon as somebody sees that points. So that was helpful. And then, I mean, I've talked about this to the professors and to the chair there as well. What happens in all these three rounds? So they are very clear about it. The intention there is not to reject anyone, uh, because they could not make any round possible. So they're very open about the candidates applying to any round. Maybe, and they see the value in people putting the best foot forward. Maybe if they could not do it in R1, they could do it in R3, and they want people to reapply so that you whenever you are best prepared, you apply there. The seats, of course, are equally divided, as you rightly said. So whenever you are prepared for it, just apply. I've also seen cases where people were waitlisted in R1, made it through in R3 when their round one waitlist was still not clear. So it actually shows that they take the admissions of all these three rounds very separately. So it's a separate process for R1, R2, and R3.
Okay,
Uh,
Shalja? Hmm.
yeah, I'd like to add my experience to this. See, you have to be cognizant that B and C do not allow reapply within the same year. So it's only A that allows. Okay, so you have to be really strategic about it. If you want to try Ahmedabad, but B and C, it should be a sure shot application in one go. In my case as well, first round, I didn't get an interview invite, but for round three, I got the offer in the round three. For all three of them, in fact, I applied in round three. But only thing I wanted to point out is be very careful what the rules for particular year are, because it keeps on changing, whether they allow reapplication or not. And that's how you kind of strategize.
Okay, thanks, guys. So you can basically apply in any round as long as your the application is ready. It's not school is not preferring one round over the other, and specifically for Ahmedabad, they are in fact more open for reapplication because they're giving you a chance to improve within the same year. Okay, that's great. Uh, there's a question on IIMs versus ISB versus international. So let me take that one. See, IIMs versus ISB. Again, not a lot to choose from. The major differences I would say are ISB has a lot more diversity in terms of work experience range from 2 to 20 years, right? However, the number of people with 8+ years of experience, and you can see the class profile is about 50 odd out of, let's say, 900, right? And whereas in IIMs, you will have people who are more closer to your experience range in case you're 5+6 odd years of experience, right? So it's largely depends upon you in terms of what kind of environment you want to be in. ISB, while it's holistic development and all that is there, it still will be, a CAD focused also in terms of the students chasing, grades, etc. Because the demographic is such, right? Sometimes a lot of people have told me as well that they do not gel well with the entire crowd because, again, the maturity level, the experience in life and work experience is slightly different. So if you're comfortable with that ambiguity and blending in, then ISB is your choice. Otherwise, IIMs definitely make sense. placement standpoint, I think all of them are right now at par. The kind of opportunities that are there, they're also at par. So it's just about your experience during that 1 year, how comfortable you are with working with a different set of people matters a lot. And a higher batch size, 900 is a huge number, right? So that also is there in terms of the internal competition that you look at. This versus international, again, like everything in life, as I said, it depends, right? If it's international, then multiple factors come in. That you are you planning or working in that geography for some time after you graduate. A lot of people have India as the focus, so should not go beyond Asia. If you're looking to transition to a particular country, then maybe target the top schools there. uh, when if the world is open for you, then obviously target the best school that you can get when it comes to the chances. And more importantly, one thing to know is IIMs and ISB are largely regional schools. So if you say I'll graduate from here today and I have very fair chances to moving to a country in Europe or US, you might still be able to do that, but the odds are not that high. They are still regional schools. Whereas if you look at an INSEAD or look at an NUS for that matter, there is a lot more openness globally in terms of transition, and same is the case with M7 schools. Even in the US, there are multiple schools which are regional, like Keenan Flagler, or if you talk about Rotman in Canada, the best school out there, but Canada focused majorly, right? So a lot will depend on where you want to work. Anything to add, guys, from your experiences when you kind of thought of applying? I know a couple of you did international schools as well. So, anything to add? Anything I missed?
Mm. Nothing from international because COVID hit and I kind of dropped the plans. Only in terms of IM and ISB, like you mentioned, it was primarily because of the batch size and the average experience. I felt my learnings would be more rich with a cohort which is closer to my experience level. And the gel-in would be easy. It's a batch of only 75. And also from a placement point of view, a profile which is as diverse as mine, it's easier for me to stand out in a batch of 75, whereas probably it would have been a very difficult uh, uh, thing to do at ISB. So these
Fair.
are the only two parameters. Yeah.
Okay. Paris?
I think you guys have summed it up pretty well, so nothing much to add. Just in terms of placement, I think there are pros and cons for both. So one part is that if I have a very unique profile, the chances of me not competing with my batch is very high because I'm the only one. In my placements also it happened, the company only took me because there was hardly anybody else from that experience. The con side of it would be that if you are so unique, at times it might be difficult to bring those companies themselves because they may say that just for one or two people, it is not worth our time going to this campus. So in those cases, probably you may have higher chances at ISB because in a batch of 900, you might still find 8, 10 people of your role, and that might motivate the recruiter to drop in there. So both the aspects I think people can consider.
Okay. Sachin?
Nothing much to add, guys. You've articulated it very well.
Thanks, Sachin. Okay, we're just at the top of the hour, so let's do some closing remarks for the applicants who are looking at this video, although we'll also look at replays as well. Uh, One question and then your closing remarks along with that. If you had admits from all of them, and Shell, that's not for you because you made that choice. If you had admits from all of the IMs and ISB, would your choice still be the same? And then your closing remarks after that. Let's start with you, Sachin.
Yes, I mean, as I in the beginning I said, for me it was one seat, about one seat in all the four schools. I got A, was happy with A, stuck to A. I would still stick with A because that's known to me now. So yeah,
Okay.
and kind of that brand name always remains with you. So
Right. So the first one you got, you just got in. That's great. Paras.
yes.
So I'll just put off my IIM Calcutta hat before answering this. So of course I'm pretty happy, satisfied with what I have achieved. But if given the choice, I would have chosen ISB primarily because of the fact that being a salesperson, networking is something which actively, passively is always inside my head. So a batch size with 900 people, I would have chosen that over 80 people. That is the only parameter I would like to share.
Great. No, that's appreciate you being candid. Okay, great. Closing remarks. Let's start with you, Shelja.
Um, I think what I would like to comment on is don't try to do a lot of self assessment. If you want to apply to the top schools in India or internationally, go ahead. I mean, give it your best shot. Do not hold back, assuming a lot of factors from last year's placements, geographic factors, macroeconomic factors, etc., etc. Just go ahead. At max, you'll end up having some learnings. And also, a lot of this discussion around IIM, ISB, a lot of students kind of drop ISB option very soon, saying that the fees is really high and all of that. So I'm not being pro ISB here, but do your ROI calculation, very prudently, and uh, speak to a lot of people. ISB offers a really strong alum network, which I haven't, any other institute would kind of envy that, and it's the best support a candidate would ever need. And I've seen candidates succeeding in their career way beyond their MBA years, where they're still taking support from their alum network. They're still being guided and referred, etc., etc. This still happens in IIMs, but this is a very individual level. But the effort that goes in for ISB is phenomenal. So my only advice is please do not drop colleges or opportunities just looking at the fees or all these other parameters of average experience, etc. Go ahead and give it a shot, get the acceptance letters, and then probably mull over them.
Okay, thanks, Shelja. Okay, Paras.
So very similar to what Shell just said. So I would like to say that do not run after the herd. If you are fortunate enough to get admission from multiple schools, take your decision. Try to personalize your decision as much as possible. Don't run after the placement figures or some rankings, etc. Try to make that decision as personalized as possible. Which kind of a cohort you want to land up to, etc.
Great. Sachin.
Yeah, so very similar to both of the guys, Shalja and Paras. So this investment that you're making in yourself, it is a long term investment, and all these colleges kind of give you the similar platform, if not same, similar platforms for your career growth beyond just the placements. So all these questions about IIMs versus ISB, A versus B versus C, they become moot once you get into the program and kind of interact with other people who are in different programs or on a platform like we are having right now. Just put your best foot forward, have the headache of deciding later on, and just trying to sell I'm Ahmedabad here. We also have scholarships from this year onwards, so do
Yes.
apply. And there's a lot of scholarships coming in, so do apply.
Yes. Cool. So thanks so much, guys. I would just again, reiterate or kind of summarize, discussion from few aspects. One is around the experience during the program. It was pretty similar. Uh, Placements again pretty similar. Consulting coming in, people transitioning from one sector or role to another, which was again kind of similar. Yes, there are differences in the batch size, there are differences in the geography, but not beyond that. I'm sure except for the disadvantage of booze maybe, Sachin. I think it's still good enough. And from an admission standpoint, the processes are different. You again, of course, need to present yourself as a holistic individual, and from a GMAT standpoint as well, it's this, higher the better. But again, my personal view right now, again, it's just my view, is yes, Ahmedabad is looking at higher scores and preferring them, but you never know. It's also a function of people applying as well. And from an application standpoint, I think it's spot on that one start applying and then only you know whether you want to take it or not. Just go through the process and then leave the headache of the decision later on. Give it a shot. Apply to all four schools, even the likes of Lucknow and Kozhikode and all that, whenever you want to do, because these are pretty good schools as well and coming up the ranks. So it's not just ABC that we're looking at. The other IIMs as well are doing really well and making a lot of effort. I know for a fact to enhance their 1 year programs experience and placements and all those things. So do consider them as well. And yeah, I mean, happy applying. It's the season is on, so just if you don't apply, you will not get through. If you apply, you might get through. So just go with that view. Thank you so much, guys, for taking out time on a Saturday evening. It was really insightful. Love the candidate feedback for the applicants, and all the best as you've just started your post MBA journey. And looking forward to working with you and connecting soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you. Thank
Manan.
you so much, Manan.
Thanks,
And
guys.
thanks everyone who came in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same.
And good luck for the applications.
Best of luck,
Great.
guys. Go
Take
well.
Manan's
Thank you.
help. That really helps.
Take whoever's help you want to. Again, I will not directly
Yeah.
tell,
Yeah, but
but
take help. Help.
hear your panelists out. Again, I will not go against that. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye bye.